This is Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will, and I'm Sarah Elkins, your host. With me today is my friend Phil Friedman, and we connected on LinkedIn probably around 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, and we have never had a video conversation. So listeners, this is the first. We've known each other all these years. We've had phone conversations over the years, but Phil commented on a post of mine about expressing emotion, being self-aware about your emotions. And he said, I am unaware of my emotion most of the time, and I have to discern it after the fact. And I said, let's talk about that in a podcast episode. So here we are today. And Phil, when you commented about that, did you have a particular experience in your head, like a story, a particular moment in time when that has happened?
No, I didn't. What I do have is a particular moment in time when the reverse occurred. And I could tell, then I suddenly understood what was happening or what didn't happen to me most of the time. I remember my wife and I have two daughters. They're both adopted. When we were looking for the first adoption, it was a horrendous process, very difficult emotionally. And when we finally completed that first adoption, I couldn't stop crying. It still brings tears to my eyes. Never mind all of the arguing, the fighting during adolescence, my daughter's adolescent period. But that's kind of over now. She's nearly 29, and but I remember when my first daughter was born, we had her from the first day she was born. As a matter of fact, she was handed to my wife immediately in the delivery room. But I couldn't stop crying. I cried for 2 weeks straight, and that was so different for me from the rest of my life. For example, I guess the best way to explain it is most of my life I've spent being a non-fan. I never confuse or never conflate my own being with, say, the being of some sports team. Or I never say, oh, we did this or we did that, and I never worried about whether a win was in the cards or not. And I've always felt detached from that kind of emotivism. But when my first daughter was born, it was so totally different that I finally came to getting some insight into how different my normal experience was or my usual experience was.
Mm. How did your wife react to that?
I'm not sure. I think that she was happy to see me emoting at some time. You have to understand, by the time we adopted our daughters, we had been together, I think, probably 10, 15 years already. And we had lived aboard a sailboat, cruised, and traveled for about 7 years.
Wow.
So we had spent a lot of time traveling and being together. So she knew me pretty well by that time, and my moods and my foibles. So she was surprised at the level of emotion that I disclosed or that I exhibited at that time.
Wow. I could just imagine her after even an hour and seeing this expressive experience with you, wondering who you were after all those years of being together. And because when you're traveling together, especially in a boat, limited space, you can't really get away from each other. I'm guessing she thought she knew you, and here you are, like, doing something really unexpected. I'm thinking about it from a wife's point of view, where I had kind of a similar experience, but not that kind of emotion with my spouse after we had been together for, oh gosh, at least 10 years. And we started playing in rock band together. And neither of us had ever done that before. and it's a surf Western band, and it was my husband's idea. And he's always been humorous. And, but I remember thinking I knew him pretty well. And for the first performance, I wasn't even part of the band when he first started it. But for the first performance, I was going to sing some backup vocals here and there. Wasn't really part of the band. And I remember watching my husband walk down the stairs in these sparkly silver pants. They look like a disco ball on his legs. And I looked at him and my eyes got wide and I said, "You're wearing those?" I was like, I had this embarrassment for him. And he said, "I bought them just for this band." And I remember thinking, I thought I knew this guy, but look at this. I mean, I don't even know. I've never seen him like this. So that's why I'm going in that direction with this conversation is I'd be so curious to know how she responded to that. Do you remember when you finally kind of mellowed out? Did you ever talk about it with her?
No. I don't think that I've mellowed out. I've never mellowed out. We've been together 42 years, probably 44 years.
But you stopped crying at some point.
Well, at some point I stopped crying. Although I had a second bout of that when our second daughter was born 5 years later. But those were exceptional periods of time, and that ran against the grain, but which highlighted what my normal condition was. And I feel almost remiss because I've always felt that somehow I was not giving my wife the emotional support she needed. She would say to me, "I need your understanding, or I need you to be able to listen. I don't need a damn lecture about what I should be doing to protect myself." It's like she at times rushes through life and hurts herself or breaks something. And there I am always ready to give her a lecture about how she should have gone more slowly or protected this or if she was peeling potatoes, push the peeler away from her hand and not towards her hand, things like that. And she said, "Well, just take me to the hospital or whatever and get me stitched up and shut up about giving me a lecture about what I should have done."
That all sounds so familiar. I wonder if every married couple has this happen. Because I was driving our car and hit ice and slush, and our two boys were in the back seat in car seats. And we did a 360 and then smashed the car up against the barrier. And I hadn't had an accident like that in decades. And I remember driving off to the side of the road, and then the blizzard started coming in, and we ended up, it was an ordeal, but it turned out fine. Nobody was injured. It was fine. But I remember this moment of sitting in the car and I'm near tears, but I'm trying to hold it together because the boys are in the back seat. And I'm like, okay, well, that was an adventure. Here are your juice cups and here's some snacks. We're going to be here for a little bit. So just make yourselves comfortable. But I'm trying to hold it together and not cry because I'm so frustrated with myself. And my husband says, "You were driving too fast for the conditions." Sound familiar? And I turned and I looked at him. I said, "You know what? I'm going to be beating myself up enough. I don't need your help." And that was it. He didn't say another word about it. And then when we finally got to the hotel and I was able to let that emotion go and cried a little bit, he said, "I realized after that you probably saved our lives because of how you responded to the slide. We didn't hit that barrier head on. We didn't hit another vehicle." But I'm curious, listeners, if you have had this kind of story, Phil and I want to hear about it. We want to know that we're not alone in this, that this happens to other couples.
Well, that's true. That's for me. One of the reasons I agreed to talk to you about this is that I thought it's about time at my point in life to find out if anybody else has the kinds of experience of life that I do, as a somehow defective observer of my own life. I've always felt I must be on some psychological spectrum of some sort, although I hope at a high functioning level. Although my wife might disagree with that, uh, but I've always felt that I am somewhere on some sort of spectrum of deficiency, but without without any confirmation or uh, uh, without any confirmation or correction, because I don't know very much about other people.
Hmm. So when you think about this taking inventory, figuring out what the emotion is that you're feeling underneath, do you remember a time when you were able to do that, to step back and say, oh, I reacted that way because I was afraid, or I reacted that way because A?
But, well, yes, I do remember lots of times when I could do that. When I was as I say, but it's always inferred. It's one thing to observe emotion in somebody else. For me, I can't observe it that same way in myself. For example, when I was in graduate school, I had a lot of it was a very demanding course of study at a fairly good school, and I was under a lot of pressure to perform. Well, as I was coming up on exams or papers or whatever, I noticed that my sleeping went from 4 or 5 hours a night to 10, 12 hours a day. And, and what I knew then was that I was feeling a lot of pressure because, unlike a lot of people who can't sleep if they're feeling pressed, I seem to want to just go to sleep. And I think that's it's some sort of self-protective mechanism, but which is not that common, but it's something that I use to look into myself and to know that I'm feeling those emotions.
So do you have to, well, I guess this probably has changed over time. I was like that too in college. I could sleep like nobody's business. But at the time, I didn't know that that's what was happening, that I was coping with stress and anxiety, probably a little edge of depression as well. But now I notice it faster when something changes. Do you notice faster now?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do notice it. And I do, I do more toward managing it than I used to. If it's not just a matter of becoming aware, albeit by inference of what's going on, but to actually try to counteract what's going on, again, indirectly.
Do you have a recent example?
Uh, yeah, I'm in um, the third pivot of career pivot of my life. I started out as a university teacher. I left academics and entered the recreational marine industry uh, in operations as a designer and boat builder. Spent about 30 years in the recreational marine industry. So I've had actually two lives that I see of so far. And now I'm pivoting toward coaching, writing, and teaching again, but online, believing that there are, maybe incorrectly, but I hope correctly, that there are a lot of people out there who would like to write, because I've written mostly as a sideline, but for a long time and published scads of stuff, and always felt that it was useful, and it's helped me through the years. So what I've decided is I'm going to combine going to go back to teaching and to coaching, and try to teach people how to make writing part of their life without.
What did you teach when you were in academics?
I was a philosopher. I taught logic and philosophy.
I think I knew that. We've had that conversation. So what was a recent experience as you're pivoting that you discerned an emotion after the fact and managed it?
Well, I hit it wasn't an easy. It's not an easy transition to make at this point, and I would hit a period of genuine depression and kind of lethargy because I couldn't see clearly where to go. I knew where I wanted to go, but I couldn't seem to find my feet, and that launched me into a period of lethargy and depression. And so I had to try to not let that overwhelm me, and I had to try to stay aware of that because it's too easy to withdraw and just let it all devolve into immobility.
When did you notice, and what was one strategy you used?
Well, I mean, I noticed that I wasn't getting much done. I wasn't feeling very energetic. And so that was part of it. I noticed when my wife was telling me that I'm just sitting around not doing anything. And that's because that's unusual. And so the strategy still is to try to bring most of what I have to do or what I plan. It's basically to go back and do much more planning and much more strategic planning, and get those plans out with task lists, get them out in the open with task lists and so on. I've recently tried to embody to go to the Pomodoro system. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I use that a lot. It's the only way I get stuff done.
So that's helped me. I got this neat little timer.
Is it a tomato?
That I bought on Amazon. This is really kind of neat. And I'll give myself 25 minutes or 50 minutes to do something and just concentrate on that and not be distracted. I mean, that's one of the as I get older, that's one of the problems that I face all the time, is that I'm easily distracted and and get off task at times.
Huh. That's interesting.
Because as a writer, I've never had writer's block. I've never had the problem of trying to figure out what to write about. It's like there's so many things to write about in so little time. I'm actually, it's sometimes I look back at what I've done. I've published over 2,000 feature articles, and written and published in virtually every English yachting publication in North America and Western Europe. So I have a large body of work out there, but when that slows down, I really notice it.
So what I'm hearing is a couple things. One is it is helpful to have somebody who knows you, that you trust, and that they trust that their commenting is going to land well, to notice, to observe something that's changed about you. My husband often knows that I have a headache coming on before I do, because he can see it. Something in my eyes changes, something in my posture changes, something in my skin tone changes. So he notices before I do when I'm on the way toward a migraine. So that's first thing I'm hearing. And the second thing is when you notice, or when somebody gives you a heads up, that finding a strategy to take action right away really helps. Like just knowing there's one particular thing you can work on and setting a strategy for how you're going to do it, and then setting a timer and starting.
Yes, yes, that helps. It helps quite a bit to get out of that. I don't want to say cycle, but to break the habit of drifting.
For sure.
Too easy to fall into drifting.
Well, I think in general, our attention spans have dropped really dramatically. So I'm not sure it's age necessarily. But yeah, I can see that. So for our listeners, the Pomodoro method, I highly recommend you look it up, is a strategy for setting a timer and getting a focused project done. So for our listeners, the way that I use this tool is on Mondays and Tuesdays, I have virtual co-working time with a variety of people who join me. And it's in the morning. And I do this every Monday and every Tuesday because it's what keeps me accountable. And listeners, if you've heard my podcast before, you know I talk a lot about the StrengthsFinder tool that I use to help with workplace communication. And in my results, I don't have anything in what's called the executing domain, which is the get shit done domain. This is achievers, people who get started, they plan projects, they set goals, very goal-oriented, very task-oriented. I don't have any of that, and I'm self-employed. And I found that for the first couple of years, I did exactly what Phil is describing. I would start to kind of tank in my energy because I'm so motivated by action, but I didn't know what action to take. And it wasn't until I started working with a couple different coaches and then took the StrengthsFinder assessment that I realized I need accountability partners. So every Monday and Tuesday, I set the timer through Zoom for a 25-minute sprint. That's what we call it, a 25-minute sprint. We tell each other what we're going to accomplish in those 25 minutes, what we're going to focus on. I put on instrumental focus music on Spotify and share it. And then we hit go. We turn off our videos, we mute ourselves, and we work for 25 minutes independently. When that alarm goes off, we stop, we regroup. I have to tell you, this week was hard, the first week of 2026 for the full work week. And I remember that first 25-minute sprint, I was all in. But the second 25-minute sprint, I was distracted. But the best thing about it is that when that alarm goes off, the distraction also stops. And then it gives me a starting point to try again. It's kind of like taking a pause, and it's like a do-over. So for our listeners, if you struggle with this like I do, look up the Pomodoro method, find people to have co-working times with you, whether you're self-employed or whether you're just having trouble getting focused time at work. Highly recommend this.
I would add one of the things it provides you with is a structure in which you can rededicate yourself over and over and over again as necessary, and to move away from recrimination and feelings of failure about not getting what you wanted to accomplish in that 25 minutes. Well, that 25 minutes is over. So now it's the rest of your life. So you can rededicate. I know that some people will feel, well, if you keep making the same promises to yourself that you don't keep, that's somehow a failure in itself. I don't think so. I think constant rededication makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think it really depends on how you think and how you work. So there are some really accurate assessments that can help with that identification. And the two books that really helped me are Atomic Habits and When by Daniel Pink. So Atomic Habits, I think, was James Clear, and When was Daniel Pink. And the combination of those two books really helped on top of my knowledge of StrengthsFinder to understand how my brain works and how I approach projects and problems and people. So having that combination of those three things in the last 2 or 3 years has completely reshaped my business in really positive ways. But you have to know yourself first, which brings us right back to the beginning of our conversation, knowing yourself. When was it that you realized that you are discerning your emotion after the fact? What happened to make you aware of that?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that it's accurate, totally accurate to say after the fact. Sometimes it's simultaneously, but
Okay.
it's always indirectly. It's always indirect. As I say, I don't emote, so I don't necessarily feel an increase in my pulse rate. I don't necessarily feel that kind of butterfly feeling in my stomach. I don't feel nervous. I just know that I'm actually experiencing those underlying emotions because I'm not behaving in ways that I normally do. I see my behavior change, although it's some sort of substitution mechanism. Like I say, I will uh, I will procrastinate sometimes. Uh, and I like to justify that by saying I've learned creative procrastination as a management technique tool, uh, because as some managers will tell you, if you procrastinate, half of your problems will just disappear by the time you get around to doing something about them. And it's just like people, subordinates and people who work for you will come to you with problems, and if you just wait it out for a while. Don't jump to it. They'll figure it out, and you won't have to deal with it. So I like to convince myself at times that I'm procrastinating in a creative way, and I further justify that by telling myself that if I worried about everything that could go wrong, since at least half of the things that could go wrong don't go wrong, then I'll spend my life being worried about things that will half the time that will never happen. So I'd say, don't worry about anything. And then at the end, you will only have worried about those things when they hit you in the face and you have no other choice. But that will be at least a 50% reduction in the time that you've spent worrying about things over the period of your life. So I have those kinds of rationales, although I'm not so sure that they're intellectually accurate. I don't know. It's one of the things I do understand is that I have a large capacity for self-justification.
That's pretty funny. I think most of us can tend that direction to rationalize our behavior away. So, when did you notice that you were doing this?
Oh, I noticed. I started noticing this uh, when I was doing my postgraduate work. I started to because then time frames and all sorts of other considerations came into play that made staying on some sort of schedule, uh, staying on some form of schedule, essential. And I could see that at times I was not behaving in a way that was commensurate with what I was facing. And it's and so I think as a younger adult, I had already started to notice that.
Do you think it helped that
And
you were studying philosophy at the time?
that I don't know. I kind of doubt it because philosophy is, at best, at the best of times, philosophy is pretty abstract. And one of the reasons I left the field was that I felt I was not getting enough day to day satisfaction or closure. You'd be dealing with the big mysteries of thought and life is not actually very uh, edifying. What I noticed at the time when I decided to leave academics was that many of my colleagues felt the same way, even if they didn't realize it, because they had hobbies which were outside their field of academics, and they had hobbies like being hobby farmers, racing cars, building boats, just rock climbing, doing things that had nothing to do with their academic endeavors, and eventually those external activities came to dominate their lives, and their academic lives became almost secondary, especially if they happen to have tenure. But what I noticed was that more and more of the philosophers whom I know went in those directions, and I decided, well, that tells you something. It tells you that you need in life, you probably need more concrete problems that are at least solvable, or that you can gain closure on, and so that you can make some sort of progress in your life. To be, I don't want to say happy, but to gain some form of contentment.
Or satisfaction that you're completing something, a project, or that there's an end result. It's interesting that you're saying that. I have a dear friend that is a philosopher, and she runs a nonprofit here in Helena, Montana called Merlin. And it's to bring philosophy to the community, to generate thoughtful conversations within community. And she is, I don't know if this is through her schooling, through her, the people that influenced her in her philosophy journey through her master's degree. But she seeks out the practical application. And I find that fascinating, because I remember taking philosophy in college and being fascinated by it, and continuing to read a variety of philosophy periodicals and books. My husband is into it. He loves Martin Buber. So, and we have behind me, we have quite a library of books by philosophers. But what I'm fascinated by is the ability to bring a practical application to something like this. And that's why I asked if some of this aha was coming from learning how to ask those questions, because I think the real practical application of learning and reading and discussing philosophy is learning what questions to ask.
I think the real application is the bottom line application is to create a habit of mind that inquires into things in certain ways, and learns how to seek answers. But it's not necessarily about the questions that academic philosophers ask themselves.
Right. That is a different thing. In practice, it's different.
I have a website. Let me back up. After I left academics and entered the recreational marine industry, I had an opportunity to write the curriculum for and coordinate the first 2-year post-secondary program that was fully certified by a legitimate board of education in boatyard operations and management. And I did that for Humber College, and taught again for about 5 years at what would be the community college level. Mm-hmm. And that was a very satisfying experience, getting that off the ground and doing that. That's led to a kind of attitude which I've had, which is that working with your hands and being in the trades does not prevent you from being a thoughtful and intelligent person, an educated person. So I even have a website, which is a bit of a literary self-indulgence, called If I Do Say So Myself, and it's subtitled The Way of Blue Collar Philosophy. And so that's basically to express an attitude or a viewpoint which is similar to the one you describe about your.
My husband is reading a book like that right now, and it's kind of the it's this idea that you can be a thinking person in trades. And I was comparing it to Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of that similar idea that you can generate really creative thought and um, um, reasoning more in the focus of physical labor than sometimes you can if you're not doing physical labor. And it's interesting because when I think about that, this just popped into my head when my husband and I decided to build a patio in our backyard. Our house was built in 1890. It's brick. And we bought a bunch of pavers so that it would match the rest of the house. And we manually dug out the backyard to do this with shovels. And we had friends come and help us. Instead of just getting a digger in and doing it the right way, we did it manually with blisters and all. And our two little boys, they were, oh gosh, probably 11 and 8 and 11 or something when we started it. And we're digging this all out. And then I remember once I got started with putting the pavers down, I wouldn't let anybody else do it because I had a pattern, I had a method. And I remember feeling very satisfied, and I was doing critical thinking the whole time. So it's interesting. I hadn't put that together until just now.
Well, yeah, I think that I go further than that. I go further than that because I would say that there's existential value in manual labor, in making things and being connected to the world of things that we use to live daily. And that it's those activities which imbue life with meaning.
Absolutely. I just spoke with an artist about that. And I said that when I was doing clay work, functional pottery was the only thing I could do. And there was something so satisfying about eating cereal out of a bowl that I made.
Yes. Yeah. And that is, I guess, my thesis in that respect is that that contributes to existential meaning to a much greater extent than cogitating about the world's problems or the great issues of historical philosophy. And that's what I think I saw in my colleagues when I was a university academic. I think that's what I saw in my colleagues. That's what they missed. That's what they weren't finding in their day-to-day lives, and why they turned to outside activities, all of which had a physical component, a direct connection to their existential world.
Wow. I have all kinds of ideas flying through my head right now, but we're running out of time, and I think I'll have to write about it instead, or maybe record a monologue combining all of these conversations I've had in recent months with artists and with you as a boat builder and another friend who sails with his wife. I'm going to have to really take some time on a hike and put all these thoughts together and something cohesive and thoughtful. Phil, this has been such a pleasure. I've so enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk through this with you.
Well,
Spend some time together.
Yes, finally, after all these years. So as we wrap up, we come full circle back to this idea of discerning your emotion. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here, but I'd like to come back to the discerning the emotion. And I wonder if there's a relationship between taking an action, doing something physical in order to recognize that emotion in the time that you're experiencing it. I mean, is there some connection here?
I think if there's a connection, it's in terms of finding finding things which you're doing in the physical world that are calming you and giving you purpose and organization for your life. And exploring what that might mean for your underlying feelings. I tend to think that we really do live a dual existence, that there's a lot of processing that goes on in the background. And we're, well, for example, I'm one of my pet techniques is, if I can't get an answer to something, if I'm perplexed by some problem, is to just put it on the back burner and go to sleep or watch TV or read a book or do something, and wake up in the morning and I'll have an answer. Well, that's not because I'm not thinking about it. It's just that I'm not dealing with it on a conscious basis. There's background processing going on. And that's where, so the idea is to learn how to manage your visible world in a way that yields results in the world that's hidden from you.
Mm. And that you're behaving in alignment with those two worlds.
Yes.
That you're somehow bridging those two worlds through your actions, through your behavior.
Yes.
I love that. I do find that when I'm processing things, going out for a hike or sleeping on it or reading a mindless novel or something entertaining definitely helps. And there's a lot of neuroscience to back up that strategy. So it works. It works. Phil, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our time together.
I have as well. Good luck. Be well, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Listeners, now it's your turn. When have you had an experience where you didn't recognize your emotion until after the fact? Is there something you can do, a strategy you can use to try to be more aware in the moment of where your emotions are coming from? Maybe it's an angry reaction, an angry response to something that should have been a more empathetic response. But in the moment, you were fearful for the safety or the health of the person in front of you. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this and maybe how you use some physical activity, building something, making something, creating something, to be able to get at that subconscious material that's floating around in your head so that you can solve a problem or just live something a little more consistently and in fully present mode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for listening to Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will.
You must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.